I'm glad to welcome you, dear listeners, on the webinar devoted to analysis of our expectation to ourselves, namely those situations when we are too strict to ourselves. Many of us can probably agree there are times when we are incredibly hard on ourselves. The sign you've been too hard on yourself might be staring you right in the face and you might not even realize it. The problem is that if we beat ourselves up too much, it can make us a whole lot less positive, and we can start to wear ourselves out with all of that negativity. Our prediction of how we want things to go, expectations can seem harmless, but not always. Low expectations, for example, can mean you underachieve in life or let others manipulate you. And what about high expectation? In a world focused on success and ambitions, they can seem exemplary, but high expectations are often a form of trying to control both outcomes and other people and can lead to considerable stress and mood swings. Expectation good things from life is indeed a sign of self-worth. The trouble is that most of us don't expect good things, we expect exact outcomes. If you live with the misconception that you actually control everything, every unpleasant situation will leave you feeling guilty. As for having high expectations from others, nobody lasts long on pedestal without falling off. Worse, wanting certain things from others can blind you to what they actually can offer you. The end result can be troubled relationships, intimacy issues, and loneliness. It is important to recognize the specific ways in which you are being too hard on yourself and how they may be impacting your work or personal life. A few signs you may be too hard on yourself include dwelling on negative thoughts and mistakes, feeling exhausted all the time, feeling guilty, not taking care of yourself when you get sick, such as refusing to use sick days, avoiding praise from friends or colleagues, comparing yourself to others in a way that makes you feel inadequate, feeling of inadequacy in relation to work or relationships, constant worry or anxiety about your life, inability to let go of past failures or mistake in your life. Dr. Kristen Neff, a professor of the University of Texas, Austin, and the author of Self-Compassion, has spent over a decade studying self-compassion. She identifies several ways to be more compassionate to yourself. Self-kindness versus self-judgment. That is treating yourself with the patience, empathy, warmth, and understanding you'd extend to a friend rather than sitting in harsh, you idiot's self-judgment. Common humanity versus isolations. That is viewing your fallibility as part of the larger human condition. This requires us to recognize our connection to others and embrace our fallibility and struggles as an intrinsic part of simply being human, rather than a proof of our inadequacy which just leaves us feeling isolated and disconnected. Mindfulness versus over-identification. Holding one's painful thoughts and feelings with warm regard. Practicing mindfulness entails observing what you are thinking and feeling with a warm head rather than trying to avoid difficult feelings or to over-identify with them and make things bigger and more dramatic than they actually are. Mindfulness or self-compassion? Actually, both. Given that mindfulness is a core component of self-compassion, it's worth asking, how do mindfulness and self-compassion relate to one another? Mindfulness focuses primarily on acceptance of experience itself. Self-compassion focuses more on caring for the experiencer. Mindfulness asks, what am I experiencing right now? Self-compassion asks, what do I need right now? Mindfulness says, feel your suffering with spacious awareness. Self-compassion says, be kind to yourself when you suffer. Mindfulness and self-compassion both allow us to live with less resistance toward ourselves and our lives. If we can fully accept that things are painful and be kind to ourselves because they are painful, we can be with the pain with greater ease. It's time to allay some fears. In fact, self-compassion is a reliable source of inner strength that confers courage and enhances resilience when we are faced with difficulties. Research shows self-compassionate people are better able to cope with tough situations like divorce, trauma, or chronic pain. And fear number 2, it's actually just the opposite. Compassion inclines us toward long-term health and well-being, not short-term pleasure. Just as a compassionate mother doesn't let her child eat all the ice cream she wants, but say, eat your vegetable. Research shows self-compassionate people engage in healthier behaviors like exercising, eating well, drinking less, and going to the doctor more regularly. Actually, self-compassion provides the safety needed to admit mistakes rather than needing to blame someone else for them. Research shows self-compassionate people take greater personal responsibility for their action and are more likely to apologize if they've offended someone. It's not. Our self-criticism tends to undermine self-confidence and leads to fear of failure. If we are self-compassionate, we will still be motivated to reach our goals, not because we are inadequate as we are, but because we care about ourselves and want to reach our full potential. Self-compassionate people have high personal standards. They just don't beat themselves up when they fail. Interestingly, research in the said compassion has debunked the once widely held belief that high self-esteem is the strongest predictor of success. Self-compassion is now regarded as more valuable for well-being and performance than self-esteem, from helping students succeed in the classroom to enabling adults to bounce back from setback and thrive in life. If you're wondering how you can be more compassionate with yourself, I invite you to start by simply paying attention to how often you aren't. If your inner critic by permanently set up shop in your head, chances of your self-recrimination have become transparent to you. Thank you for your attention. See you soon.